Hello, everybody. So good to have you all here with me. It has been a minute since I did a recording, but I thought I'm going to start doing some. StreamYard has changed some of their backstage stuff and made it a little bit easier to do video recordings. So um, I'm going to start adding some commentary recordings, I think, to the channel, but it's been a while since we talked about um, just things in general with Delphi and as far as how things are going to play out here in the next few weeks. We have 30 days until opening statements happen in this case. The 14th of October is when the jury selection begins. She has it slated, I believe, for 4 days. And then, and that'll be in Allen County. And then we have the trial will be moving to Carroll County and the jury will be sequestered. So there's a lot that's happening and there's a lot of talk out on the Delphi streets that, the trial's not going to happen, whatever. And as we all know, she denied the interlocutory appeal, which I expected her to do. Um, Everyone that I've spoken to regarding this it's just the defense's attempt. They're basically exhausting all avenues that they have with this case. But I think the bottom line is that the defense in this case does not have a defense to put forth for their client. And I know that that seems like a ridiculous statement because really, in our judicial system, the defense doesn't have to defend. They don't have to prove anything. They just, that's all up to the state, obviously. So, and that's how the system works. But moreover, we have talked about this for so many months about the fact that a guilty man versus an innocent man, and what would that behavior be like? In my opinion, and again, it's just my opinion, you guys. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to like what I say. This is an opinion. But if you are innocent of the charges you're being accused of, I believe that you are going to do everything in your power to prove that. And you're going to put forth an alibi. You're going to put forth um, alternative narratives, whatever. We all know that they've tried to do that. The defense has tried their alternative narrative, but unfortunately for them, they had no evidence of the alternative narrative. And you can't just come out and say that Martians came down from Mars and committed this crime. You can't go into a court of law and state that in this country. You have to have evidence based upon what it is that you are alleging happened. If it's not your client, who was it? Who did this, right? I'm anxious to hear the opening statements in this case. I really, truly am. I think that opening statements are going to really set the tone for the prosecution's case. I think Nick will lay out exactly what happened and what they intend on proving. Now, what the defense has to say in their opening statement is going to be quite interesting because, again, if you go back and if you follow cases and you follow them not only not just in the media, but you actually follow the court proceedings and you see how these cases play out, there's a lot of things that are said in opening statements that never come to fruition. A lot of times the defense will bring up things in their opening statement that they never intend on putting witnesses on the stand to back up. Um, I basically point to Casey Anthony's case that comes to mind for me for this one because Jose Baez said a lot of things in his opening, some of which he never addressed during trial. They touched on things, but they never fully addressed them. So that's something to keep in mind. But opening statements are extremely important. This is when the defense and the prosecution gets their chance to present basically their outline of the case and how it is going to be presented. The state will give their opening, and then the defense will follow with their opening. And for the prosecution, that opening statement is critical because it is going to lay the groundwork for the case and how they intend on presenting it and prove it. How is it going to be proven? The burden of proof is on the state in this case. And how are they going to use that with the applicable law? They need to present the facts of the case in an orderly and easy to understand manner, right? A lot of times, big words, fancy law jargon confuses jurors and they don't really understand. To always remember that the opening statement in the case is not an argument, it's not a discussion of the law, but it's going to be something that tells the jury what the evidence in this case will show, and it serves as their roadmap to follow. And the opposing counsel, be it the state or the defense, cannot object during opening statements. A lot of times attorneys will use drama and they'll create drama to make their opening statement look more like a real trial. They want to be able to present their theory on the case. And they will definitely tell the jury why they're there. They're going to give a brief overview or story of what the evidence is going to show, presented from their side's perspective. And that purpose is to give the jury the big picture. In other words, the facts of this case are straightforward. And the evidence is going to show that on February 13th, 2017, Richard Allen abducted, yada, yada, yada. There needs to be a brief explanation of what has to be proven. So they're going to tell you under Indiana law what elements have to be proven. They're going to identify witnesses. They're going to tell you the witnesses that they will call. They're going to tell you what testimony of each witness will be. They're going to tell you what that key testimony will be. Then there will be a conclusion to the opening statement. Sometimes they discuss the burden of proof in their opening statement. Sometimes that's at the beginning of the opening statement. Sometimes it's at the end. And they're going to tell you that the state has to prove the case by the preponderance of the evidence. And they're going to explain to you what the preponderance of the evidence means. They'll restate the theory of the case in their closing. And they're going to tell the jury what they want the jury to find. For example, they may say, for these reasons, after you've heard all of the evidence in this case, at the end of the trial, we're going to ask you to return a verdict of guilty against Richard Allen, guilty of murder. They may say, based on the evidence you will hear at the end of the trial, the defendant is going to ask you to return a verdict of not guilty. Opening statements take a while. These are not something that attorneys take lightly. They have to do many revisions and edits, and they definitely seek out the input of others, and they may practice their openings. They try things out. If they don't seem to work, then they won't use them. An opening statement usually has a hook in the introduction. And a hook is merely a sentence, you guys, or a very short paragraph within the introduction that serves as an attention-grabbing element, okay? And the effectiveness of this hook is going to be defined by the ability of the person giving the introduction to interest and motivate the jury to listen more closely. Things that are going to make the jury stop and say, wait a minute, what did they say? The hook should arouse interest, but it should never be argumentative. A lot has been said about opening statements that it depends on who's the better storyteller, which attorney. Telling a story is at the heart of a good opening statement. The story they're telling paints a vivid picture, and they want to walk the jury through it with each of their witnesses. They want to use an active voice, and they want to use language that reinforces the theme but doesn't overpower the jury. And they want to create interest, but they don't want to tell everything. You never want to give away the whole case in your opening statement. They also don't want to argue the case, which I'm not so sure that the defense is very good at, because if we all look back over the history since Richard Allen's arrest, the defense in this case has been arguing this case in motion after motion after motion. The opening statement is not an argument, and you should never argue the facts or the law. Arguments are for closing statements. It's okay for them to state and develop their theory, but they want to stick with the facts that's going to show that theory and what facts will not show. They want to use proper phrasing within their opening statement. Proper phrasing, things like the evidence will indicate, the facts will show. And you want to use these kinds of lines, but you don't ever want to overdo it. They want to stay in control of their picture, their painting in the jury's mind. Everything that they say in opening statement should have a purpose. And you never want to ask questions during opening statements because it allows the jury to come up with an answer that you might not want them to. You don't want to ever waste your time on unimportant things, or go into excessive detail, which may make the jurors lose focus. We all know that Brad Rosie is extremely um, likes to hear himself talk. Let's put it that way. When they do motions, they do 100-page motions that should only take 3 or 4 pages. You never want to use descriptive emotional content when describing the most important facts. And this can be very hard in this type of case because it is emotional. It's emotional to all of those involved. In the opening statement, they want to state the facts affirmatively, and they do not want to negate the other side's facts or position. And the more they repeat something, the more it is remembered and believed. So if they say the evidence will show that Mr. Allen abducted the girls off of the Monon High Bridge, or you say Mr. Allen did not abduct Abby and Libby from the Monon High Bridge, the knot is lost. The jury is going to remember the abduction of Abby and Libby. Instead of, they would want to say, Mr. Allen was not on the bridge when the girls were abducted. The jury will remember was not on the bridge. They want to personalize their side witnesses and they want to use their names. You always want to bring humanity and personalization to people within the case by depersonalizing the opposition's witnesses with language like defendant or plaintiff. So they're going to talk about Richard Allen as the defendant in this case, and they're going to use that language over and over because they're going to depersonalize him and they're going to make their witnesses more personalized by using their names. So in this case, the prosecution is the government. And they're not going to be shy. They're not going to talk about themselves as the prosecution. They're going to talk as the state of Indiana. And they're also going to talk about facts that are not in dispute. And they're going to talk about those. There are certain facts in this case that are not in dispute. The defense and prosecution have agreed to blah, blah, blah. The parties in this case have agreed that Richard Allen confessed 61 times. We already know that they've agreed to that. But there is a big performance and style issue. And body language is very powerful. It's a very powerful tool. Remember, we had body language before we ever had speech. And apparently 80% of what you understand in a conversation is read through the body and not the words. Can you believe that? They're going to memorize their opening statement. They're going to memorize it. They're going to make sure that they have the movement, the inflections, the gestures, and the ability to maximize all points that they are going to get to. They may take notes or they may have notes, but they will use them sparingly. They're going to make eye contact with the jurors. They're going to look them in the eye. They want to educate them about Abby and Libby's case. They will move close and away from the jury, but they will never get too close, only within 5 to 10 feet. And they want to be as natural as they possibly can to keep their attention. They also want to use conversational type language, which is engaging. And they're going to the type of this case being a double homicide of two teenagers is going to dictate the style and tone of these opening statements. Mark my words. They're going to be very forceful in the state's opening statement about what transpired and what happened to these two girls. Where the defendant's opening statement, I see them trying to evoke sympathy with their client and the fact that he has been wrongfully convicted or, excuse me, wrongly accused. They're going to, again, use the legal jargon and legal terminology sparingly because at the end of the day, most average people are not that versed in the legal ease, if you will, that is spoken at trial. But they want to use their body language, their posture, their movement around the courtroom deliberately and consciously. So keep an eye. We'll be keeping an eye on all of that. They want to show confidence. They want to stay balanced. And they want to have transitions in between points that they're trying to make. And they don't want to fidget or have any unnecessary gestures or body movements. Gesturing is important to create interest and drama. Gestures include the give, the show, the tell, and signposting. And they don't want to ever shy away from pointing to individuals in the courtroom. And they will definitely do that. If you are the prosecution in a case and you point to the defendant, it will be using a harder accusatory tell gesture with a pointed finger. But if you're pointing to your own witness, it will be using an inviting, open-handed give gesture. And talking to attorneys and talking to my best friend's husband, the judge, he basically said that you're always nervous going into a trial, no matter what side you're on. It would be unusual for you to not be. And you need to act professional and competent, even if you are nervous. And so, again, it is really important. Mock trials, opening statements, they're very, very important. And it can make or break a case in some ways. An example of an opening statement might be, hold on. I don't know why. On a theme, and I touched on that a little bit earlier. And what should the themes be based upon? Well, some examples of themes are: this is a case about taking chances. Mary Jones had a dream and a plan. Revenge. That's what this case is all about. This is also a case about pain. Mr. Johnson's only companion today is constant pain. This is a case about police brutality. Those are some themes. What will the theme around Abby and Libby be? It'll be interesting to find out. Labels. Again, we want to focus, we want to hear them focus on the story and focus on the people, focus on Abby and Libby. Who are the important players in the case? And most jurors review this world through their emotional eyes. This is important to remember. And they want to personalize the story to them about what happened to Abby and Libby. They're going to make the story vivid. They're going to recreate the actual 13th of February and what happened that day. And they are going to make it emotional and dramatic. It is going to be very emotional and dramatic. And they will keep it simple. And they'll be logical and they'll be concise. And they're going to walk the jurors through the events in chronological order. What's the secret weapon of an opening statement? Anticipating weakness. And that's on both sides. What does a good opening statement have? It has an introduction. It has parties. It has the scene. It has instrumentality, date, time, weather, the lighting, what was the issue, what happened, basis of guilt, non-guilt, anticipating and refuting the other side, and then finally, the conclusion. They're going to introduce essential people, critical witnesses, prosecution's counsel. They're going to tell the story about Abby and Libby, and they're going to build them up and make them sympathetic to the jury, which I really don't see that how they would need to do that. Just the fact of what happened to these two girls, the jury would be sympathetic to. But they want the jury to be able to relate as best they can to what happened to Abby and Libby. The defense, they're going to talk about important parties and witnesses that the state's counsel didn't mention or glossed over. They're going to give that visual description of the scene of the crime. And they want to do that so that the jury can visualize it. The instrumentality is any vehicle, machinery, equipment that may come up. And in this, my feeling will be we're going to be talking about the bullet and Richard Allen's gun. The date, time, the weather, and lighting. They're going to set the stage for, when this happened. And they're going to describe that. And the issue will be the important tool for the defense to deny the prosecution's version of the disputed facts of this case. And when they go into telling us what happened, they are going to shine because this is their moment. Their job is to get the jury to believe their side of the story or their version of events. The basis of guilt or non-guilt, the prosecution is going to give a summary of the facts of the case and conclude that the defendant is the perpetrator. The defense, however, is going to point out holes in the state's case. They are going to try to discredit witnesses. They're going to try to find ways that the state's story is not persuasive enough. And they're going to emphasize their own picture and their own conclusion. But they do need to anticipate and refute the other side. And the prosecution is going to diffuse the defense without appearing defensive. And the defense is going to talk about the evidence that the state has already described. And in their conclusions, they will keep it brief and they will keep it simple, simple and direct. They're going to tell the jury the facts of the case and that the facts that will support their side, and then they will ask for a verdict. For example, members of the jury, after you've heard the evidence, we are confident that you will find the defendant guilty of each count in this indictment. The murders of Abby and Libby. The defense will say at the conclusion of this case, you will have grave doubts that Richard Allen was anywhere near the Monon High Bridge when it occurred. If anything, you will be convinced that someone else did it. Consequently, Richard Allen is simply not guilty of anything. Those are examples of what a conclusion in this case might look like. So yeah, I just wanted to come in, give you guys a brief synopsis, basically, of what opening statements consist of and how they may look for us. And I hope that everyone is doing well. I will be live tonight at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time on my channel. So I hope to see all of you there. Happy Tuesday, everyone. It's good to be back. I have been super busy with my new puppy, Loki, and he and I have done 70 miles in a month. We have been hiking and walking and going to festivals and just enjoying life. And it's been really fun. He is, he's my husky mix. And he's husky and Labrador, believe it or not. And more husky, a lot more husky than Labrador. But we are learning each other. He is definitely still a puppy. He has a lot of energy, and training is commencing. He is, he's just been a joy, and I really am glad that he's keeping me on my toes and keeping me out there in the world. I have really, really enjoyed it. Thanks, guys. See you all, I hope, tonight.